Hello, students. Today we will be studying about the seventh chapter of Flamingo, that is the interview. This particular chapter is written by Christopher Sylvester, and this chapter establishes the importance of new system of interrogation named as interview. Now, especially in the arena of journalism, it's seen a lot. And Christopher Sylvester stresses on the fact that interview has become an important part of the lives of all the classes of people, irrespective of the literacy status to which they belong to. And so, before moving ahead, give a glance over the Christopher Sylvester, and as it's given in the book over here, I am doing the explanation over here. It's given over here. Christopher Sylvester was born in 1959, and he was a student of history at Peterhouse in Cambridge. And let me tell you, students, that Cambridge is a city on River Cam in England. And he was a reporter for Private Eye for 10 years. And Private Eye is one of the best selling news and current affairs magazines of that time. And it was founded in 1961 in London, and has written more features for Vanity Fair also. And let me tell you, students, that Vanity Fair is actually an English novel written by William Makepeace Thackeray, and it was published as a 19-volume monthly serial from 1847 to 1848. It was published as a single volume also, but it was done in 1848. Now, let's move ahead, as following is an excerpt. It says, following is an excerpt or an extract and taken from the introduction from a particular book, that is Penguin Book of Interviews. Now, this particular book, Penguin Book of Interviews, was published in 1993, and it has interviews of many famous personalities in it, like Karl Marx, Theodore Roosevelt, Rudyard Kipling, Christobel Pankhurst, Adolf Hitler, Mahatma Gandhi, Joseph Stalin, and there are many more people whose interviews have been given in this particular book. Now, today we will be dealing with part 1 of the chapter, and let's see to it, what does it tell to us, and let's read it and understand the explanation of it. So, let's read it. Since its invention a little over 130 years ago. Invention of what, students? We are talking about the invention of this particular topic, that is interview. This interview actually came into existence about 130 years ago. The interview has become a commonplace of journalism in nowadays, and it's very common on TV, and we see it in magazines, we see it in newspapers, that interview of a particular celebrity has been done, of a particular actor, actress, or perhaps maybe some political leader has been done over here. So this is a very important part of our lives now. We can say that interview plays a very important part of our lives, and we just cannot say that we are not affected by it. Now, today almost everybody who is literate, who have read an interview at some point in their lives, while from other point of view, several thousands of celebrities have been interviewed over the years. Now, everybody who is actually literate, who is much more educated, and who have read an interview, just not interviews that are actually shown on TV or done on the radios, but there are interviews, as I told you, done on in newspapers, and there are interviews done in the magazines also. So that's why it's written over here that it's read so. Thousands of celebrities have been actually interviewed and over the years, and some of them have been repeatedly done. Now, so it is hardly surprising that upon opinions of the interview, of its functions, methods, and merits, that these are three different and very important parts of an interview, which it has actually functions, or when we say functions, it means how an interview actually functions or works. Now, the second thing is methods, the way in which an interview should be conducted, and the benefits out of it. Merits, when we say about merits, we actually talk about the benefits or the advantages of the interview, and they vary considerably. It depends greatly upon who the person was who was interviewed. It depends upon who was the interviewer who was interviewing the people, the different questions that were being asked over here. So all these things were very important. Now, some might make an extravagant claim over here. Extravagant means exaggerated claim, which is much more than reality. For it, as being in its highest form, it's a source of truth. Now, student, this is a piece of truth that these people, these interviews try to bring in of the lives of the people to the audience. And it is in practice an art also. There are many people who take it in a form which in a situation when the person who is interviewed or the interviewee is not able to understand what the things are being explained, the questions that are asked. Sometimes the questions are not relevant. Sometimes the questions are so personal, and the interviewee or the person who is being interviewed does not want to give an answer to those questions, and the person starts disliking the interview. And that is why many of the celebrities stay away from these interviews. They try to be aloof. And there are very few people who really come up, have the courage to face the interviews, because they really know that it is a really hard and a tough thing to produce an output which is called truth. And there are different things from their life that can get revealed. The truth can be revealed about them, and that is why these people stay away from interviews. Now, moving ahead, others, usually celebrities who see themselves as victims. There are celebrities who see themselves, students, as victims. They suffer from it. It's just not that they are giving an interview and it's just okay, they are a celebrity, a question's been asked, but it's much more than that. People become victims of the interviewer. It happens simply when questions which are asked in such a way which should not have been asked. It may be pertaining to the personal life of the person who is being interviewed, and the person may not be liking in such a situation, and it might despise the interview. It might despise the interview means, and the person, such a interviewee person, would start disliking or hating the interview. The interview as an unwarranted intrusion into their lives. Such an person who is interviewing, whose interviewer would like actually to ask a lot of questions, but the interviewee sees it just as a way of intrusion into their life. It's an unwarranted way, undeserved, unnecessary, according to themselves, into their lives, or feel that it somehow diminishes them. It somehow lessens the importance of the people that are being interviewed at this point of time. Just as in some primitive cultures, in some ancient cultures, in some prehistoric cultures, it is believed that if one takes a photographic portrait of somebody, then one is stealing the person's soul. Earlier, it was I thought that if someone is actually taking a picture of it when a camera was introduced, the camera was invented and it was new. So people thought if any picture was taken, so it is somewhat stealing like of an soul of the person, a spirit of the person. Now, V.S. Naipaul, I would like to tell you, feels that some people are wounded by interviews. Now, let me tell you, V.S. Naipaul, the full name of V.S. Naipaul is Vidyadhar Suraj Prasad Naipaul. He was born on 17th of August 1932 in Trinidad and Tobago. He died on 11th of August in 2018 in London, England, and he was a novelist, travel writer, and essayist too. He has won the Booker Prize in 1971 and has also won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 2001. My dear students, V.S. Naipaul feels that some people are wounded when they were actually interviewed and lose a part of themselves. They think the way I suppose they feel discouraged, disheartened by the way the questions were asked. The same way, let's move to a new personality, and that is Lewis Carroll. We all know Lewis Carroll. Lewis Carroll, the creator of Alice in Wonderland. We all have studied this wonderful story in our childhood. And Lewis Carroll, the real name of Lewis Carroll, my dear students, was Charles Ludwig Dodson. And he was born on 27th of January 1832. His pen name was actually Lewis Carroll, and that was not his real name. And he was a wonderful author, illustrator, poet, mathematician, photographer, and a teacher too. My dear students, he is most known, as I told you, for Alice in Wonderland. And he too never consented to be interviewed. He never wanted to be interviewed. He never agreed in his whole life to be actually interviewed. It was his horror of being lionized which made him thus rebel. He was in horror actually of being lionized. Lionized means getting a lot more attention than usual. If I am talking to you, so it means that I am having some attention to it. And you are also giving attention to me. But when we are talking of lionization, or when we say over here, when we talk about here that he was being lionized over here, when we talk about Lewis Carroll that he was lionized over here, it means actually that he was getting a lot of public attention more than usual. What people just simply say that they have written a book and that's enough for them. But here we come to know that he feels that he has just got a lot more attention than what is actually required. And that made him repel actually. That made him actually repel back, force back these people out of his own life. He didn't want to give an interview, that is why. And this is one of the reasons why most of the acquaintances, the close ones, the friends, the other people are not able to actually come in much close contact with each other in such situations, and these celebrities find some or the other way to deal with them, to talk with them, to meet with them. Now moving ahead, students, is, and then the persistent petitioners for his autograph. Now obviously when person becomes such a wonderful person, a celebrity, so people ask for autographs over here. So that's what written over here, that people used to come to Lewis Carroll to ask for autographs, and he would afterwards relate the story of his success and silencing all such people with much satisfaction. He used to satisfy people how he actually wrote the different stories, how he came to the point of the things of writing the story, and all these different things, and the different kind of fun that he would have with them. According to him, he was just a simple person. He should not have been much treated with such much more public attention as he was getting right now. Now, Rudyard Kipling also, students, my dear students, I would like to talk about it. Rudyard Kipling expressed an even more condemnatory attitude towards the interviewer. Rudyard Kipling, if you know, students, he is one of the person who has actually written a very wonderful book by the name of The Jungle Book. His full name was Joseph Rudyard Kipling, and he was born on 30th of December 1865 in Bombay, and he was from India in Bombay. Then he died on 18th of January 1936 at the age of 70 in London, in England. He was a short story writer, novelist, poet, journalist, and he has also won Nobel Prize in 1907. Now, Rudyard Kipling expressed an even more condemnatory attitude towards the interviewer. He strongly disapproved these interviewers actually, and he and his wife actually suffered one such moment as written ahead. His wife Caroline writes in a diary for 14th of October 1892 that their day was wrecked by two reporters. Wrecked means destroyed. The whole day was destroyed simply by a particular reporter. They wanted to spend time somewhere else, doing some, giving time to some other activity, but the whole day was ruined simply by an intrusion of a person whom they didn't want it to be in their lives. Now, his wife Caroline writes in a diary for 14th of October 1892 that their lives was wrecked by two reporters from Boston. This particular reporter was from Boston. Boston, students, I would like to tell you that Boston is actually a city of Massachusetts, state of United States of America. Now, she reports her husband as saying to the reporters, "Why do I refuse to be interviewed? Because it is immoral." The reason why he wrote this was that he thinks that it is actually immoral. Rudyard Kipling thought it is actually immoral. It is a crime, just as a crime, as an offense against my person, as a human being. He was just against it. Now, moving ahead, students, it is a crime, just as much of a crime as an offense against my person as an assault. He took it as an assault, students. And when we say assault, it means an attack, and a deep attack and a sudden attack. Just as much as equal to merits punishment. And when we use the word merits punishment, students, it means a deserved punishment. Some punishment, according to Rudyard Kipling, should have been kept for these people also who actually interview the people. A deserved punishment, a balanced one, not much more, not much less, but a deserved punishment. That is what is merits punishment is. It is cowardly, and while it is actually bad, it is, according to Rudyard Kipling, it is actually coward. No respectable man would actually ask, much less give it. No person would actually ask for any kind of merit punishment, and no one like one to have it even, or give it to somebody else. Yet Kipling had himself perpetrated such an assault. Perpetrated means yet Rudyard Kipling himself had committed such an assault. such an action, such an attack against whom? On Mark Twain. Again, Mark Twain was a wonderful writer, my dear students. Mark Twain, I want to tell you, students, that Mark Twain, real name was Samuel Langdon Clemens. He was born on 30th of November 1835, and he was born in Florida in Missouri state of United States of America. He died on the 2nd of April 1910 at the age of 74. He died in Connecticut state of USA, and he wrote under the pen name of Mark Twain. He also used other names like Josh. He used a pen name also as Thomas Jefferson Snodgrass. Now, his famous works for which he is known most were The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Now, my dear students, he too, I'm talking of Rudyard Kipling, that he too had taken an interview of Mark Twain students a few years ago. Before, and H.G. Wells in an interview too in 1894, my dear students, referred to the interviewing ordeal. This is actually an ordeal on an unpleasant experience of H.G. Wells. My dear students, H.G. Wells, the complete name is Herbert George Wells. He was born on 21st of September 1866 in Bromley. That's the name of the place. Kent is the state, and this particular state is present in England. He died on the 13th of August 1946 at the age of 79 in London. Now, his works were related basically to science fiction and social realism also, students. His works include The Invisible Man. That's a wonderful novel. Even CBSE had this particular novel. Even CBSE had this wonderful novel. And he also wrote another one was The Time Machine and The War of the Worlds. So these are three different, and there are many more which he wrote actually, and basically he dealt with social realism of the society, of the people, and he was much more concerned about it. And what the wonderful thing that he utilized to bring in the socialism and the realism present in the society was the utilization of science fiction, bringing in the wonderful stories through the medium of science. Let's move ahead, students, now. But was a fairly frequent interviewee. Frequent means oftenly. He used to interview person who is being interviewed actually, and for 40 years later found himself interviewing the same thing. And he interviewed Joseph Stalin, he interviewed Saul Bellow, and who had consented to be actually interviewed on several occasions, who had given permission actually to be interviewed. Nevertheless, once described interviews as being like thumbprints on windpipe. When we say the term thumbprints on windpipe means, it actually means trachea, or in very short we can say that thumbprints on the windpipe means you are purposely compelling some person to tell us, to bring out some kind of truth. Yet despite the drawbacks of interview, there are some drawbacks, my dear students, of the interview. There are some disadvantages of the interview also, and it is a supremely serviceable medium. Christopher Sylvester accepts over here. Yes, it is extremely usable medium of communication according to Christopher Sylvester. These days, more than at any time, our most vivid impressions of our contemporaries are through interviews. Contemporary means of the same era. So, are through the interviews. And Dennis Bryan, my dear students, Dennis Bryan, I want to tell you, students, that he was a journalist, and author of many books, and from 1923, and he is still living at the age of 96. He recently had his birthday in the month of December, and he was born in Cardiff in United Kingdom. And Dennis Bryan has written almost everything of woman reaches us through one man asking questions of another. So we see that interviewer actually is asking about a person's life, actually things related to life, and it's about somebody else. It's not the person. The interviewer doesn't talk about himself but talks about some other person, and the person is actually peeping into some other's lives. Because of this, the interviewer holds a position unprecedented power and influence. So my dear students, the text says over here that the interviewer holds a very important place and that he has a lot of power to ask a question from the interviewee, and it shows that these people have actually become too much ahead in asking questions and trying to bringing out the truth. They sometimes cross the limits. My dear students, this is part 1 of the chapter, the interview. This is the first part, and in the second video I'll be coming up with the second part, and we'll talk about a different interview, and we'll see to that Mr. Umberto Eco was interviewed by Mukund Padmanabhan, and we will study about that in the next video. For this much is okay for the part 1. Thank you.